Welcome to Florida Internet and Television's FiTV, the show that brings you the latest in internet and television content, technology, and connects you with Florida politics. FiTV is presented to you by Florida Internet and Television, whose members connect millions of Floridians to the things they love, the needs they have, and the work they do. And now, here's your host, Brad Swanson.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FiTV. I'm your host, Brad Swanson. We are coming to you just a few blocks from Florida's capital. I am joined today by Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nuñez. Thanks for coming on FiTV.
Great, thank you for having me.
All right, we're at the beginning of the session. There's so much going on, but when you're in the executive branch, activities going on all year, so many important topics that you guys work on. We're going to start on human trafficking. It's a cause that FiTV and Florida Internet and Television is a partner to the Attorney General's actions, but you're chairing committees and you're doing a lot of stuff. Let's start out with what's happening in human trafficking, and then we'll go from there.
That's an issue that I've been involved in for a long time and I'm really passionate about as a mom of three and as someone that has seen really the dangers that we face here in Florida. Florida ranks number 3 in terms of calls to the national hotline and reporting suspected and confirmed victims of human trafficking. And so we really want to tackle this from a statewide perspective. And so when I was in the House, I had the opportunity to work on some significant pieces of legislation. And now in the executive branch, the governor has appointed me to the statewide council on human trafficking. And so we continue to push forward on those issues because they're really important.
Well, and Florida, the third largest state, so we have the challenge to fight, and we've got the Super Bowl coming up. Tell us what's happening, what actions are going on around the Super Bowl.
I'm really proud to be a part of the committee that's looking at the issues with regards to human trafficking and the Super Bowl. So we've really developed some unique partnerships, you all included, as well as our hotel and motel industry. Everyone has come together, and we're really sending the message that to these perpetrators of this horrific crime, Florida is closed for business. So if you're planning to come to Miami or next year in Tampa, you are not going to find that we're going to sit back. We have law enforcement engaged. They've been preparing for this. When we saw the Super Bowl the previous year, you saw over 160 arrests. And so our hope is, of course, to prevent it from happening to begin with, but we're ready and we're prepared and we're not going to allow that to happen on our watch.
What's amazing is companies like Uber, for example, have been trained to look for the signs of human trafficking, and so they're training drivers and they're training everybody at the hotel fronts. And what's amazing is we have this great opportunity to fight against this horrible thing, but even the White House is playing a role in human trafficking. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have been working with the White House for quite some time now, working with their policy folks on really looking at it from a national scale. I know Ivanka Trump came out and did some meetings earlier this month in Atlanta, which is another hub, and I will hopefully be heading to the White House later this month to serve on a panel and to address this issue, because I believe that we all have a responsibility from the federal level on down to the local level. And I'm proud to be a part of the executive branch that really takes this issue seriously. And so, like I said at the onset, we are not content to be number 3 on calls to the national hotline. We want to eradicate this once and for all, but it's going to take an entire community of groups like Uber, like others that have come to the table and are willing to partner with us.
What's amazing about human trafficking is I think the common go-to is people associate it with prostitution, but there's labor human trafficking as well, in sweatshops and things like that, and that is also part of the whole equation. So tell us a little bit about that aspect of it and how we're fighting, the broader version of labor human trafficking.
Absolutely, and that's an important component of the task force. Our statewide council is really looking at it comprehensively. So we have several committees. I chair the legislative and special initiatives committees, but we have a responsibility to educate the public. People often think that this is something that's not occurring in the United States or in our own communities. And so I think we have been working with the Department of Education. They have released a rule, and they're going to be providing education curriculum to make sure that our students understand the signs and make sure that our teachers are prepared. The Department of Health has a role to play because they see a lot of these individuals that come to their county health departments. So we are really taking an all-hands-on-deck approach.
Well, let's talk about healthcare since you touched on that, because they're the first line of seeing the human trafficking piece. But you are also very heavily engaged with all the departments of health across the state. What are you doing in that world?
Governor DeSantis tasked me with overseeing the Department of Health at the statewide level. So when I took that responsibility on, I decided that I wanted to really spend some time at the local level, because they say all politics is local, but they are indeed the first line of defense. And so our county health departments, we have one in each of our 67 counties, see any number of public health issues, everything from way back when we had the Zika crisis to things related to HIV/AIDS, hepatitis A. And so I've spent the past year visiting with county health departments. I hit about 31. I still have about 36 to go.
36, right? We do our county.
So I did my math
count,
right. But I really had a great opportunity to sit and listen and to learn. Different regions and different communities have different challenges. So when we're here in Tallahassee making decisions, both budgetary and policy, we want to make sure that we're understanding what the unique needs are of each region. So for example, in the Panhandle, in areas of Northwest Florida, we hear that they're still dealing with the effects of Hurricane Michael. So we want to be mindful of that when we're making decisions, and we also want them to know that we care about them, because they're servicing so many of our constituents and so many communities, and they play an important role in public health.
And when you're dealing with rural counties, I mean, the access to just a facility that can handle any type of health issue is incredible. But then when you get into your ultra dense, Central Florida and Miami places, I have to imagine that it's a different challenge that they're facing down there. So the rural guys, we get that. What are the urban areas facing? What are their number one challenges for healthcare? Definitely
there are differences. And so what you see in the urban areas, high density population areas, is they're still reeling with the effects of HIV/AIDS, newly diagnosed individuals, people that fall out of care, that really create problems for our communities. And so about last year, the federal government announced their End the Epidemic initiative. They want to end the AIDS epidemic within 10 years. And so the states have a critical role to play, and they identified in Florida, we have 7 counties. As you could imagine, they're the big population centers: Miami, Broward, Palm Beach, Duval, Orange, Pinellas, that Tampa area. And so we really want to address this issue comprehensively. So the CDC will be sending some significant funding to find innovative ways. And many of our health departments at the local level are leading the charge. They have been recognized nationally for some of their initiatives. And so as it relates to testing and treatment and making sure that we link these individuals to care, I think that's critically important as we continue to deal with that issue. Gosh, you think about HIV and the diversity of the population that disease affects, and we have cures, and now it's really about education and getting people through the process so they can get to those valued treatments and cures. And I think it's possible. I mean, it's amazing, but it takes leadership like the governors and yours in that world. Hepatitis is another one that, I mean, we grew up in a world where like, hepatitis, what's hepatitis? But now we've got this resurgence of hepatitis. Tell us a little bit about how the departments of health are combating that. Florida's in the midst of a hepatitis A crisis, and so several months ago, our state surgeon general declared a public health emergency. We were seeing the numbers grow exponentially, and I have good news to report. We've seen those numbers really decline, and so at the peak of the crisis, we were seeing approximately 100 new cases every week. We've gotten those numbers down to 29, but we're not content to just see a decline. We want to really completely eradicate this. There is a preventable way to really educate the public. So hand washing and good hygiene is important. There's vaccinations available, making sure sanitation is an important component as well. And so we've really tackled this crisis pretty aggressively, devoting a lot of time, energy, and resources, working, again, collaboratively. I don't think you can minimize the importance of partnerships with our sheriffs and our jails, with other entities and industries. And so we're really trying to address this, and we hope to have really positive news soon. Well, and you think about, we'll go back to Zika just briefly. So Zika was this mind-blowingly and economically crushing, news because it was borne by mosquitoes and nobody knew who had it and that sort of thing. How does the Department of Health tackle that kind of a problem and then attack it and then seek to cure it? I mean, use Zika as the example. We're really fortunate to have excellent relationships with our federal partners. So obviously Governor DeSantis has been able to really focus on issues and be able to work with Washington and the Trump administration given his background and his relationships. So we're blessed that way. In addition, our State Surgeon General has excellent relationships with the CDC. So the CDC has been on site in cases like Zika, and even with this in the epidemic initiative as well as the hepatitis A crisis, they've been great partners, helping us with guidance, helping us with policy recommendations. And so something like a Zika or any other communicable disease, a disease of that magnitude that really affects not just the health and well-being of our citizenry, but also our tourism and our economic well-being. It's something that we deploy very quickly. We make sure we have all the right partners in place. And we've got great folks that work at the Department of Health, epidemiologists that are looking at this and being able to identify where those hot zones are. And so what I would tell Floridians is that we have excellent leadership at the top, and we're going to make sure to keep everyone safe, especially those of us from South Florida that understand the mosquitoes in the summer can be really challenging.
Well, I think the word you've touched on multiple times in both the human trafficking and with the Department of Health is partnerships. You've got local professionals who are doing the thing. Nobody's working in a silo, so it's really everybody coming together from the feds to the executive office with the governor and you, and then these local health departments coming together to combat. I mean, I think it's a new Florida almost since Governor DeSantis has come in to be the governor, and with your leadership. I mean, do you sense and feel a difference? It seems like that to me.
Absolutely. I'll tell you from the very beginning, we were adamant that we wanted to make sure our state departments and our agencies broke down those barriers, broke down those silos. And when it makes sense, you need to collaborate, you need to coordinate, because there are so many areas that touch different agencies, and everybody has a role to play. And so we want to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction. And those partnerships, I can't stress, they're critically important. State government cannot do it all, and we cannot do it alone. So we want to make sure that we leverage those partnerships and really take advantage of the opportunities to drive the message, to make sure we're addressing things in a comprehensive way.
Yeah, it is refreshing, if you will, and I'll go ahead and say this, is I think about Ronald Reagan's quote, it's amazing what you can accomplish when nobody cares about who gets the credit. Okay, I've bastardized the actual quote, but I think yourself and the governor lead with humility and selflessness, and that just empowers everybody to get on board with initiatives like this. It's amazing. All right, so let's move forward into the future, right? But actually, we're doing it right now. So talk to us a little bit. You're the chair of Space Florida. What does Space Florida do for Florida?
Sure. Well, Space Florida is the state entity, if you will, that is really designed to uniquely position Florida as a leader in all things related to aerospace. And so I think most Floridians understand, they know the Kennedy Space Center, they understand the important role that Florida has played historically in our space program, being the launch capital of the world. But there's so much more going on in the Cape, and so much more going on in the entirety of Florida as it relates to the space industry. So the governor appointed me as chair. He's asked me to lead that initiative. We've got a great board of directors, all singularly focused on making Florida a leader in space. And so that comes with a tremendous amount of renewed interest in the area. As you recall, a few years back when they retired the shuttle program, the area around the Cape was really reeling at that point, and there was a lot of lost jobs and lost opportunities. But if you go back now, you'd be pleasantly surprised. So much private sector investment, so many companies, and big names. We're talking everyone from Elon Musk to Jeff Bezos, and there's every type of related industry that is thriving.
I think that's the real story, right? So we see it in, if you're a space junkie like me, you get it, but most people will see it on one of the pages of their newspaper, oh, we landed this. But when you think about it, we grew up thinking, oh, it's the federal government, it's NASA, it's all government employees. But now it really is this amazing industry of many smaller companies, but that are funded by these amazing, inventive individuals like Elon Musk, and they're all doing it right here in Florida, right there in Brevard County, and in multiple other counties around Brevard to support that industry. So what are you seeing that just blows your mind out there?
Well, again, just the investment that's taking place. I've been able to tour many of the facilities, everything from launch pads to manufacturing sites, and just the spillover effect to the economy. Again, and not just in Brevard. Clearly, that's the hub, but all the different areas of the state, you're seeing a renewed interest. You're seeing companies move from other states because, of course, Florida is very attractive from an economic standpoint, but also the environment around the Cape, our location is pristine, and the opportunities to garner educated, highly skilled workforce. We've been gearing up for this, and I'll tell you, Florida is up for the task.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, between the ULA launch that just happened, 3 weeks ago, my son actually was there for a field trip, so it's amazing. You got Carol Craig, you got a lot of women-owned and minority-owned businesses that are investing in this. I mean, it truly is a diverse economy that is supporting the future of the world and, shall I say, the universe, right?
Absolutely.
It's amazing. So we've got Elon Musk, you got Jeff Bezos, you've got the Virgin Space Tours
Sir
as well.
Richard.
You got, right, Sir Richard, we all love Sir Richard. He runs a train. The train, oddly enough, goes right to his spaceport right there. It's going to be there. It's just, there's so many things in space. We always used to like to say in intermodal world, Florida has its freight on water and at airports and on the road, but we also ship our freight vertically, right? Because this is where it's going to happen. And I can't believe that universities and high schools aren't capitalizing on. What's the school system doing to support this and build the next generation of techies, if you will?
There's really interesting programs taking place, apprenticeships, all geared around the space industry. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the renewed focus from the federal government on all things space. As you know, there was the announcement of Space Force,
right.
And so Florida's been in the mix trying to draw those combatant command headquarters here. But I think the Trump administration has made it very clear that Florida is going to play an integral part. He identified Patrick Air Force Base over at the Cape as an important asset for all things related to the Space Force. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz, everywhere from the school districts on up through the universities. But segueing into career opportunities, Governor DeSantis has made it very clear he wants for Florida to be known as #1 in the country on career and technical education. He has given us a directive. By 2030, he wants to be #1 in the country. And so we're already seeing tremendous steps being taken at the school district level. We've seen high schools. We've visited some high schools and seen the great work they're doing. And there are endless opportunities around the space industry, and I think it's only going to continue to increase.
Well, it makes so much sense. I mean, Florida has the fifth and fourth highest ranked K through 12 system in the nation. Most people don't think about that. They have that perception from 20 years ago. And it makes sense that our kids and our schools would be in programs that support the space program. So when we think about that, the governor and yourself have been very vocal on encouraging those programs. What have you seen these kids doing in these high schools across the state?
Just amazing things. You think of the traditional pathway to a space-related career, and obviously engineering pops into your head.
Right.
And so there's a lot going on, but there are spillover industries, of course. Just so many things taking place. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, you talked about our K through 12 stats, but you also neglected to say that we have the #1 higher ed system in the country. And so that's a testament to some of our alma maters.
Right.
We won't get into that today, but certainly we have...
On this show, they're all amazing.
Exactly. But that's a testament, again, to great policy and investing in futures. And our kids are our future.
Right.
So we want to make sure they have ample opportunities to do what they're passionate about. And so really educating students as young as in the elementary grades to make sure that they understand there are unique opportunities. They just graduated a whole new slew of astronauts. One of them is from Miami. I'm very proud of that.
I saw a bunch of pictures. Which one's from Miami?
I forget his name, but he went to Sunset Senior High, which is just a stone's throw from my house.
That's
but
good.
I'm hoping to meet him one day.
I love it. It was a super diverse crew of astronauts, and I'm loving the fact that it's Florida that gives them that platform to launch from. No pun intended in that space. Okay, so let's move from space, right? Because I could geek out on that all day. But let's just talk about technology and innovation. And we've talked about high schools. We've talked about talent. Let's dive a little deeper into the workforce and career training in that space in high tech? What are you seeing that Florida's doing right in that space, and where are we going?
So obviously there are a number of fields that are critically important for technology and innovation. And what we've seen is a number of degree programs, both at the high school level with certifications, but then advanced degrees, everything from cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, robotics.
Right.
And so we're really seeing a renewed focus on those STEM-related fields, but also things like welding, critically important. We have a shortage of welders.
That story blows my mind. I mean, literally a welder could go get trained and be making six figures by the end of his or her training. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And so while we recognize there are multiple pathways for success, for careers, for our students, and for opportunities, we want to make sure that we're providing them with an array of options. So as we focus our funding and our policy decisions on what do we want to invest in, what do we want Florida to be known as, I think you could go on and on about the importance of robotics, again, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, which I just learned is a thing.
You know that's our thing. We love
I know
that.
it's a thing,
good.
but they offer degree programs on that.
I love it.
So there's a lot going on, and I think it's an exciting time.
Well, let me bring you back to cybersecurity, because that's a big initiative that the governor is focused on, and you're leading a lot of initiatives in that world. Where are we going as far as the state of Florida with cybersecurity?
So I'm chairing the state's cybersecurity task force, and we just had our first couple of meetings, and we'll be meeting later this week over in Pensacola, addressing cybersecurity, again, from a comprehensive manner, looking at identifying any potential vulnerabilities, making sure our system and our architecture is...
The state system.
Absolutely,
right. Okay.
yes, because there's also some linkages with the private sector. But nonetheless, we want to make sure that we're protecting citizens' data. We hold millions and millions of citizens' information in our possession. So we're mindful of that, and we want citizens of Florida to understand that we are doing everything we can. In addition, we have a pretty important election coming up, I understand.
I've heard the rumor.
And you know, Florida, for one reason or another, always seems to be in the headlines as it relates to elections, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Not this year.
Not this year, not this time. Governor DeSantis has taken a lot of steps to ensure the integrity of elections offices throughout our different counties. There were some that were not up to par, and he made changes there, and they've been very positive changes. But in addition, from the Secretary of State's office, she's been doing a number of things. And so when I'm asked about the integrity of Florida elections, I can tell you we have a number of provisions in place. You know, we have paper ballots, marked paper ballots. We do not load those vote tabulations to the internet. We have done more than enough to ensure the integrity of our elections, but we're continuing to evaluate opportunities. And again, we want to make sure that our ultimate responsibility is protecting the integrity of our data and making sure that our elections are safe, sound, and secure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida has obviously been front and center in over 2 decades, and I think so much of that has been driven at who's in the elected office to try and make us look bad, but really you've got 67 offices across the state of Florida that run amazing elections, and except for a few glitches here and there, we're flawless. And I guarantee you every other state has had similar glitches, but the fact that you guys are committed to making sure our elections are pristine and immediate will go a long way for the national confidence in who we elect to.
We definitely live in different times than a few decades ago, and so there are a lot more challenges to address. But again, Governor DeSantis has given a very bold directive to our Department of State to make sure that they are doing everything they can on the front end and ensure a smooth and seamless election. Right.
Well, and I think when you think of cybersecurity and you think of citizens' data, you know, we all know, you know, everybody from the DMV to the Department of Professional Regulations and all those guys, DBPR, you know, our data is in the state government, and protecting that data to know that, hey, I can go file a business application, and because I filed that, I don't want to suddenly become a target of somebody in a foreign country to use my identity, and then that to the elections. I mean, it's a lot that cybersecurity task force is handling.
It certainly is, but again, going back to our initial theme of partnerships, we have some really great stakeholders, people with vast experience and really unique roles within the private sector and the public sector. So I'm confident that together we can come up with a really solid list of recommendations of things that the state needs to do. We are obviously making sure that we are going through each and every one of our agencies. You know, we've had some challenges over the years, but Florida is really focused on this issue because I think it's critically important in the
third largest state, $1 trillion economy. We certainly are at the vanguard of economic development when it comes to advancing the totality of all of Florida's economies, and we're very grateful for you and the governor's leadership in all of those worlds. Lieutenant Governor, final closing seconds. What would you like to say to Florida as far as where we're going?
Well, Governor DeSantis issued his State of the State just this week, and he really laid out a vision for a bolder, better, brighter future for Florida. I think Floridians understand that we're here, we're focused on the issues that are important to them, we're tackling them in a really pragmatic way, and I think that we have a lot to be excited in terms of Florida's future. When you look at issues of the environment, education, and some of the other things we touched upon, there's really no limit to where Florida can go, and I'm just proud to be a part of it.
I love it. Well, Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nuñez, old friend as well, thank you for coming on FiTV and sharing the vision of the governor and yourself and the work you guys are doing. It's so important to advance all of Florida, both in the business world, which is obviously my background, and then in the health world of the everyday citizen that just wants to live, work, and play in Florida. So thanks for coming on.
Always great
Appreciate
to be
the work
here.
you're doing.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today's show. Make sure you hit us up on our social media. And for now, thanks for tuning in.